a difficult time period following a heartbreaking loss in Tallahassee on Saturday. We got back to work yesterday. Guys came in, got a lift, went over the film, saw all the good, all the bad. But I think the key part of yesterday was that we had an important team meeting at the end, and we were able to come together and find a purpose and a togetherness and a bond to finish the season. The one thing that these guys have shown all year is that they will fight, stay together through anything, and that's unusual. If you look around college football in this day and age, and specifically to fight for our seniors. We don't have the same number of older guys as we did when we started the season, due to injuries and other attrition. But we do have a special group of guys who will be playing their last game in Hard Rock Stadium on Saturday. And for guys, whether it's however long they've been here, guys like Mike Harley, Charleston Rambo, Navon Donaldson, Jared Williams, Lou Headley, on defense, John Ford, Jade Silvera, Frierson, Amari Carter, Zach McLeod. I mean, there are some guys who have really, really put in the work, the blood, sweat, and tears for this program. And we committed as a team to send these guys out with a great memory with their last game at Hard Rock Stadium with a win against a very tough Virginia Tech football team. So that's, and that's where we left it. And I think our guys will be ready to get back to work when we come back to practice tomorrow. And with that, open up for questions.
I just wanted to go back to the decisions that you had to make in the fourth quarter. They were tough decisions, game-shaping decisions that didn't go your way. When you went back over it, did you have any second thoughts or regrets? Specifically, I'm talking about the 4th and 1.5, 2, where you had a chance to go for it, and if you get the first down, the game's pretty much over. And then the other decision, I guess, would be when they got down to the goal line and to score. Had you let them score at that point, the offense would have had a minute or so on the clock with at least 2 timeouts, I guess, to come back and either tie the game or go ahead. And I mean, obviously, those are the decisions head coaches make. But did you have any regrets over it in the last, say, 24 hours?
Yeah, you always go back and forth, and you look at every decision that you made. The 4th down and a 1.5 yards, like you say. I thought we all felt very comfortable punting it. You certainly, in hindsight, could have gone for it, but either way, we're gonna have to get a stop. The ball was on our side of the field. We've been pretty aggressive on 4th down. That's kind of been in our DNA. But we've also been really, really good in fourth quarter defense, especially in the last couple of drives of the game when we were playing in the ACC. We've got a great punter, and we were on a 28-3 run in the game, and we've been playing, very well. Maybe it was 20-6 at that point, but we've been playing very well against them. So punting the ball, we felt good about that. Obviously, we came inches away from downing at the 1 yard line, which certainly would have changed the dynamic of that last drive. It was a 4th and 14 that got us into the, you mentioned the bridge between the one decision and the second decision. The 4th and 14 is obviously the play of the game. Once that was converted, that's I think the hardest one, and Florida State had been on the 1 yard line this year at Wake Forest and had fumbled a sneak that was recovered by Wake Forest, and that's a part. I mean, we have a surrender call where the defensively you let the offense score. And a lot of times, you've seen that. It was Indiana, Penn State a year ago, and down by 1, something like that, where you're going to lose on a game-winning field goal. But the fact they still need a touchdown, I mean, obviously they were not far away. But the idea was that, hey, can we at least take a shot, take one shot, see if they can fumble, false start, something like that happens. The tough blow for us was that we were offsides on the 2nd down, because they had an issue too with time. I mean, they're still down by 5, and they can't get cute with either downs, and we had a chance to put them in a 3rd down. So yes, but Gary, I mean, as I mentioned, I think this morning, I mean, it's just a very unusual situation to be up by 5 with the ball on your 1 yard line in that deal with 52 or whatever was left in the game, and the question of, do you let them score or do you not let them score? So a hard one.
And then just as a quick follow, you guys have a lot going on with play. You had a couple players leave last week. You had this disappointment now this weekend. You're 5-5. This team hasn't responded well in these situations the last few years. How I know you just said you had a team meeting and all that, but how do you like change that pattern and keep this season from falling into just a total I don't know if disaster is the right word, but just bigger disappointment?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if you look at who we are and what we've done this year, I mean, these guys have had the chance to give up the ghost, earlier. I mean, we were 2-4. Obviously we've been down in games, and like I said, I mean, the one thing that makes this football team uncommon is the way they fight. They fight for this program. They fight for each other. And there's a lot of pride. And I think that's why our older guys are important, because we, met with them separately last night, and their leadership will be crucial. This means a lot to them. All of a sudden, when you run out of that smoke for the last time, life hits you in a different way. And we had some of those guys express that to their teammates, in terms of what this means. When you're a freshman, you think you can play forever, and you will play forever. But a couple of guys express how fast it goes. So, I can go on, Gary, is the DNA of what we've shown for 10 weeks. For 10 weeks, we've been, as mentally tough as a football team as I've been around. And, and I don't see any reason why that wouldn't continue this week.
Thanks, Carter, and thanks for the time, Manny. I wanted to kind of follow up on Gary's first question about decisions that you may have regretted or second guessed. When you looked at the film, on that defensive drive that Florida State scored on, you had the two timeouts you called. They came after some clock ran out. Do you feel like you guys should have or could have called those timeouts earlier, just so the offense would have had more time in case they did score? I heard you on the radio mention that.
Certainly the way it turned out, those seconds all mattered, right? But there were two things going on at once. One was, what was Florida State's mentality? What was going to be their tempo in terms of how they're going to score? And then also, how are they aligned? And could we see what they were lined up in, and perhaps, so once they kind of got to the line, we saw their formation, saw what they were, and I was able to run down to get a timeout. But yeah, I mean, obviously, it goes without saying that every second mattered in that situation.
And then a quick second question. James Williams seemed like looked like a groin injury from where we were seeing that. I guess update on his status. What's going on with him?
Yeah, it's a soft tissue injury for James. He's pretty stiff and sore yesterday. We'll kind of see how it progresses throughout the week, and hopefully loosens up. Be good for Saturday.
Curious if there was anybody else dinged up. Obviously, a physical game, some big hits. Some of your receivers took some big hits. Anybody on the offensive side banged up, or did you guys come out of it pretty good aside from that?
Yeah, the injury report last night, we're sore. There were a lot of bumps and bruises, I'm sure, both sides. I mean, it was a very physical game, as you mentioned. But as we talked about yesterday in our injury report, there was nobody that right now that would be, a for sure out for Saturday. So, but it's going on week 11. There's a lot of bumps and bruises.
And not to necessarily compare this program to all the others, but I mean, there's a lot of teams across the country struggling that are, former national champions. Texas, for instance, Tennessee at times. When you look at the state of where you guys are at right now, Manny, do you at all sort of say, hey, we're not the only ones, having a 5-loss season? Or, I mean, when you look at the big picture of trying to build this thing and get it right, I mean, do you sort of see it as, there's other examples of great programs that have won that just aren't getting there yet?
Yeah, I think your point, Manny. I mean, like I always say, like, two things can be true at once, right? Yes, if you look around college football, there's a ton of parity, right? There's a ton of teams that have 3 losses in their conference, in the Big Ten and the SEC. You look at our league, how everybody's kind of, squished in there together. But in our mindset, that doesn't make it okay, right? I think there's a respect factor for actually how hard it is to get your team back up to the top. But that doesn't mean we can sit there and say, aha, look, see, they're having issues and they're having issues. So, that somehow justifies our issues. So yes, I mean, there is a respect for how hard it is, and how competitive college football is right now. And you just watch it every week with how the games are. But we know, for example, we know that all we were was a finish away from a chance to go, finish our season, go 6-2 in our league and beat Florida State, so like, and obviously we put ourselves in a hole. Now, there are some things, as we know, that happened in the beginning of the year with injuries and roster changes and lineup changes and so on and so forth. So we have very little margin for error. I get all that. But just because we have parity in college football doesn't mean that anybody's satisfied or happy, or thinks it's okay that we're 500 in the league and 500 overall. So But we do respect the fact that winning is not as easy as it appears, and the fine margins that we were on the proper side of the 3 weeks prior, we ended up on the wrong side Saturday.
Since you've been the head coach at Miami, your teams have been one of the most penalized teams in the country. 115th this year. What are you doing to fix the issue?
Yeah, they had discipline for that yesterday. I mean, obviously the first drive of the game, they have 5 penalties on defense. I mean, once you had, I mean, it was just an example of just guys being overhyped. I mean, I think we were offsides 3 times, of guys just, trying to do too much and trying to be so eager to make a play. And then we had hitting a guy out of bounds on just a, just again, letting our emotional maturity get the best out of us, I mean, in that setting, in that scene. Had a couple, what you're always looking for is the preventable penalties, the ones that happen before the snap and the ones that happen after the snap. And, we had a couple of false starts on offense. Now I'd say part of that you might credit to their crowd, which was phenomenal and loud and crazy. Other than that, some of the things that happened during the course of the game, I mean, they had 8 on them. I could get into, some of the details of that, but I'm really not allowed to. But we're looking to control what we can control. And certainly we knew that especially the way we started the game with our penalties on defense, just helped them get going and establish a rhythm, which is unacceptable.
What was some of the discipline stuff that you went through yesterday? Can you explain maybe some things that went through?
Yeah, there's physical discipline and, pushing a, 45-pound plate around the indoor facility, things like that, that we do, just to, and for that accumulates for all the penalties that we have. So it's some things that nobody likes to do. And it's a reminder of how penalties don't, and everyone does it. So it hurts not just the player that creates the penalty, but it hurts the entire team.
Hey, Coach, I want to ask you about just transfer portal, and wanted to get your thoughts on, with teams around the country likely going more to the transfer portal moving forward, do you think there's a chance that market resets and kind of starts to mirror the high school recruiting market? Essentially, the best programs, the most successful programs get the best players in the transfer portal too, moving forward?
That's a possibility. I think the key going forward is, I mean, obviously we know that college football is about to go through some major transformations. And I'll give you an example, like if in some way, shape or form, if the playoff expands. I mean, right now we're in a closed loop playoff system where there's very few teams that have had access to the playoffs. So yes, that's always going to attract the players sort of to the top of the food chain. And I think we're seeing a competitive imbalance between those schools and the other ones. So I think a more inclusive playoff will help spread some of those players around. Your point, I mean, you saw it this year with, how Alabama's offense changed with Jamison Williams coming in from Ohio State, and they got the linebacker from Tennessee. So that'll all be a part of it. But I think the other thing, David, to consider is that obviously the more people that are out there, right, everybody can only take so many people. So the fact that you've got this class now, you've got the high school kids and, you've got college kids, you may have college kids coming in from smaller divisions, different levels. So maybe that will add a little bit more parity and volatility, but it's certainly those at the top of the food chain. The way that the game is set up right now, we're always going to have an advantage.
You talk about the fight that your players have shown, and they just never give up no matter what. Do you discern any differences in the attitudes, let's say, of the younger guys, the younger recruiting classes, and the veterans, the older guys? Or are they all in one lump, or how do they differ in that regard?
I think I think early on in the season, there was this, sort of old guy, young guy thing. And I think as the year's gone on, I think to your point, the team has come together, and I think everybody's fighting together. And you see guys like Rashard Smith making big red zone catches, making big plays down there in Tallahassee. Obviously see what's happened on defense and how young we've gotten in the secondary. So I feel the older guys are providing good leadership, and the young guys are following right along, and everybody's, playing for each other.
Hey, Manny. So I wanted to ask you a question with the benefit of hindsight. I know the defense has had some good moments this year. It's also allowing 408 yards a game, same as last year, more points than last year, over 30 points a game. So, I was curious, with the benefit of hindsight again, do you think in some ways taking on the dual role of being head coach plus defensive coordinator was maybe more challenging than you thought it might be?
Yeah, I mean, you would say that if you were assuming that would be the reason why the numbers are the way the numbers are. I mean, we've had our challenges this year defensively. We're in week 11, and it's been hard for us to get settled in our secondary. And that's very. I think if you compare offense and defense, you see as our offensive lines got settled as the year's gone on, and how that's helped us on offense. And secondary, we've had guys in and out in the lineup, and then you finally kind of get James going, and then James, is out. You have guys, you have Avante playing 54 snaps in Tallahassee in his, third ever college game or fourth ever college game, and Cam back there playing 77 snaps or whatever it is. And those guys they're competing and fighting their tails off. And but getting our best 4, getting our best 5, and eventually our best 6, because that's really what hurt us when James went out, because James is our dime. We had to move Tyreek to dime. Now you have different changes up at corners. I mean, that's been a part of our inconsistency this year. So yeah, I mean, it's always hard to say, to answer your question, like, well, here's the reason why, Matt, that we're having the issues that we're having. But at this point, we're trying to get better every week and trying to find ways to play winning defense. And the reality is after the first penalty drive, they had a 12-yard drive after a sudden change, and they didn't get in the end zone until after the 4th and 14 play, which, generally speaking, in a Miami Florida State game, that's probably an improvement on performance from where we'd been over the past weeks. That's what makes not finishing the game such a hard pill to swallow.
I mean, so just to clarify, though, I mean, the reason I'm asking more so is, like, you guys are 5-5. You need a head coach who's obviously majorly focused on getting this thing on track. You also have to split that duty as a coordinator. Like, I'm asking, like, sort of, is that a tough give and go where in hindsight, maybe it would have been a little easier for you had you had someone on the defensive side you could lean on more? That's sort of what I was pushing towards.
Well, that's where I'm blessed, because I've got a phenomenal defensive staff. I mean, when you have guys like, Travaris Robinson and Bob Shoop and Just Simpson, Jonathan Packey, you guys, been this for a long time. You've got that. There would be a greater concern, Matt, if the team wasn't playing. You know what I mean? If that's what I'm saying. I mean, to me, the fight, the energy, the motivation, the emotional toughness of the football team, that to me reflects what our program is all about. And that's the foundation for everything that we do successfully going forward. So I think the part as coaches is to get our guys to continue to execute better. And what we saw on Saturday is to get our guys to execute better in crucial moments, and so that that we can function when you're in highly stressful situations.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, computer issues. Hey, Manny, you mentioned the defense and how it has played well at the end of games, and even the games you lost. It allowed the offense to get back into those games. But the last 11 minutes, Florida State's 2 drives, one ending in the 11 with the field goal in the last one. Was there anything different in those 2 drives? Was it just give credit to the other guy, or what did you see something different in your defense than you did when you were able to, start the comeback in the second quarter?
The field goal drive was a very slow and methodical drive. They did not have an explosive play during that drive, which normally that's kind of been the sort of deciding factor of whether we have a good drive or a bad drive on defense. The season has been, if we don't give up explosives, we very rarely give up points. And when we do give up explosives, we normally give up points. They did not have an explosive play, which is a run of more than 12 or a pass of more than 16 that drive. They had to convert a 4th and 1, which they got by an inch. And you got a red zone stop, and took a lot of time off the clock. And still had us up by 5 at that situation. The last drive is 2 plays. I mean, it's a long pass where they just did a phenomenal job of execution, better than they had shown all game. And I keep coming back, and then they get down there, and we hold them tight for 3 plays, and we've got a 4th and 14 that we have to stop. Which, I mean, statistically, you should stop 4th and 14. It is what it is, and that's, like I said, that's our responsibility of getting our guys trained up in a situation to understand in that type of stressful environment how to be able to play our best. We almost had that exact same situation in our 1-minute drill that we do at the end of practice on Wednesday. Pretty much the exact same coverage. Avante Williams batted the pass down to sort of win the drill that day, and we didn't get it done. And that's what as a coach, that's what I'm responsible for, is that our guys to play their best when their best is required.
Thank you.
You said after the game that a lot of the early mistakes that the players were making were just being too hyped up and too much emotion, because it's a Miami, Florida State game. My question is, you are someone who is so familiar with this rivalry. How is it that the guys didn't have the understanding coming into the game of the types of emotions that they were going to feel and how to manage them?
Yeah, well, I mean, when you can talk about something, you can understand something intellectually, but then you actually get out there, and it's a whole different thing. And then I think when we watch the film of the first quarter, I think what actually shows up is, again, defensively, the first drive, you could definitely see some guys that, as I mentioned earlier, that were making over aggressive penalties. But then after that, the next two times the defense goes out on the field, it's a sudden change situation. Defense gets two really, really important stops to keep us in the game. Offensively, we turn the ball over. I mean, that's simply it. I mean, that, and so more than the emotions, and yeah, was it an environment for us on offense that was, a little bit unique and all that type of stuff to take some growing into? Yeah, I mean, all those things are true, but also David, I'm going to kind of use what you said to further the point. There's been a lot of Miami, Florida State games through the years. The reason why they're normally classics is because sometimes somebody starts one way and someone starts the other way. And I can think of a whole bunch of games where Miami made the finishing play at the end where Florida State was up big. I can think of a bunch of games where Miami was up big and Florida State went on a run in the fourth quarter to win the game. So it is a game of momentum swings. And we had a lot of guys that were either in their first Miami, Florida State game or certainly in their first Miami, Florida State game in Tallahassee, in that environment. We told them the last 2 years, if you were in the game last year, that wasn't a Miami, Florida State game. Really, the game up there 2 years ago was not quite a real Miami, Florida State game. The one Saturday was, and like I said, I mean, I thought our guys grew into the moment, grew into the occasion. We just didn't finish.
And Manny, this is the first time that you, as a head coach at the University of Miami, have been on the losing end of one of those Miami, Florida State games. Again, you're so familiar with the rivalry. You grew up with the rivalry. What does it feel like in terms of other losses? Do you feel this as a bigger deal? Do you feel sort of all the hype going in and then the disappointment coming out? I know you have to move on, but it can't just be like any other loss, is it?
No, it's 100 times worse. It's like getting hit with a ton of bricks. I mean, and it's not just the loss. It's the way that we lost. It's the way that our guys were so brave and so courageous and came back and took control of the game. And then we just didn't finish. That's what I'm saying. The fourth and the 14 will haunt me forever. It just is what it is. It just happens. But that's what happens when you step into those games. There's been wild moments for both sides. And we have to own it. We have to own it that we're on the wrong side of history for this game. But I think you may have mentioned this. The most important thing right now is we got to set that aside. We can't do anything about that today. We can't let this game beat us twice. We'll get a chance to play them next year in Hard Rock Stadium. But right now we've got to move on to Virginia Tech, and that's why we've got to focus on our guys and focus on getting our older guys out with the win at home.
One quick follow. You mentioned the 4th and 14 is going to haunt you forever. Do you blame yourself for the 4th and 14?
As a coach, you always blame yourself. You always blame yourself because you're always looking for, and it's not, I think the easier thing to think is, well, is it a call? Beyond the call, it's like, what could you have done more to prepare your guys to execute in that situation? And I think that's a point. Yeah. I mean, you're always, that's what being a coach is about. That's what being in the arena is all about. That's what being a competitor is all about. And then obviously, you got to tip your hat. They made a great throw. They made a great catch, but yeah, I mean, that's just those things you work in this profession, those things happen. It's a heck of a lot more fun when it happens for you. But when it doesn't, it stings.
Hey, Coach. A month from right now, we're going to be talking about your signing class. Just wanted to get an idea of just how you're feeling about recruiting going into that, and then I guess hindsight looking into summer. Is there anything that maybe you guys would have done different to maybe add more numbers, whether it's just be more aggressive or just evaluating the recruiting philosophy in general of how you guys maybe approach this, maybe understanding that you guys are going to take less numbers because of the transfer portal and all that stuff. But is there anything that maybe you guys could have done differently to maybe add a couple of those talented guys over the summer and moving forward just throughout the rest of your tenure? Is there maybe something you can take away from the fact that while there's quality in this class, the numbers just aren't there? And how you can maybe just use that same approach, maybe tweaking it a little bit for future classes?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things about this class that are unique. I think some of it is the, how strong the class was in our historic footprint. So that I think that's going to factor in. We felt like coming out of the summer, we felt like if we were above 12 to 14, that we felt like that'd be more than we wanted. We were not comfortable being at a big number coming out of the summer. Now there's obviously some that we missed out on that we wish we could have closed on. But that's always going to happen. We also knew that there were some that we were going to have to run the final lap with. And as I mentioned before, that's no different than we did last year with James and LT and Jake and guys like that stuck it, came to Miami at the end. So, I mean, as I mentioned with everything, you're always analyzing what you're doing. But it's, recruiting is about how it ends up and it's how you finish. And especially now with this year, with the portal and being able to respond to what's available, and then B, what you need with your teams based off of who's on your roster going forward. I mean, I will tell you this, we're not in any sense of panic here. I mean, there's no, as you mentioned, the quality of the guys we have are really strong. We are to get where we need to get to. I think what's obvious is that, I think we've seen it with our recruiting efforts the last couple of years, it's high quality guys that we're after. High quality. We don't just need the guys to make up the numbers. We need difference makers on our team. You see what difference makers do when guys like, Avante takes the field and stuff like that. And that's what we're hunting. We're hunting guys that can make difference in these types of games to get us where we want to go. And now we have a situation. I mean, look at the difference maker that Charleston Rambo is, and what a difference that guy's made. Phenomenal what he's done this year. And now you've got these young wideouts, the three amigos right behind him, ready to step into that role. I mean, that to me is what it's about. And that's just one position group to use it as an example. And you scale that out across the team, and that's the pathway going forward.